The storm that night tore through the valley like a wild, raging beast. Jonas Ward lashed the window frame shut, the oil lamp swaying with every gust of wind. Then came a knock at the door. 3 heavy, urgent knocks, muffled by the sound of thunder. Jonas gripped his rifle tightly and stepped onto the porch. And when he opened the door, he froze. Standing in the thick downpour were 5 towering Apache women, tall, muscular, their clothes in tatters, their breath visible in the cold air. Rain ran down their sun-darkened faces, drawing out the deep blackness in their eyes, as if they were carved from the stormy sky itself. The one in front, Neola, spoke in a low, raspy, but steady voice. "We want a man tonight. Please, let us stay." It hit like lightning to the chest. Not an invitation, a plea for help, wrapped in pride. Behind her, Taya shivered with fever, supported by Sana, while Kira and Luma kept watch over the darkness behind them. They looked like statues cast in bronze, worn out, but still ready to fight. Jonas stared at them in silence. In this land, kindness was sometimes a death sentence, but in their eyes, he saw something, not fear, but dignity. He opened the door wider and said quietly, "Come in, stay, but not for that." Thunder cracked overhead, and in the heart of the storm, the lonely man knew tonight, peace had taken a different path. The little house was cramped, but Jonas still made room for them. He pushed open the old grain cellar door beneath the floor, where the air was damp and smelled of cold earth. "It is safer down here," he said. No one responded. There was only the sound of rain pounding on the metal roof, and the heavy breathing of bodies that had run a long, desperate way. The oil lamp cast a faint golden glow across 5 sun-darkened faces. Neola sat with her back to the wall, a long wound on her shoulder still bleeding. Her eyes never left the entrance. Sana and Kira checked over the knives and pistols they had taken from the patrolman. Luma tore a strip of cloth to wrap Taya's foot, the youngest, burning with fever, whispering something in Apache through her delirium. Jonas poured a little water and set it down beside them. He asked softly, "Who are you running from?" Neola looked straight at him, her eyes burning like fire. "Dutch Carver, a human trafficker. He hunts our women. Those who resist are sold to soldiers. Or worse." Silence filled the cellar. Jonas knew that name, Carver. The one border troops once called the Butcher of the Frontier. He had heard that man laugh in a saloon once, bragging that Apache women's skin sells for twice the price of a purebred horse. Jonas's hand clenched into a fist. Neola noticed. She spoke again, her voice hoarse and raw. "We do not want pity. Just one night. At dawn, we will leave." Jonas looked at them, 5 giants in the dark, worn down like people who had already lost the world. He shook his head. "No, the storm is not over tonight. Stay." From outside, the sound of hooves echoed, distant, but clear. Jonas grabbed the Winchester rifle. The women stood up instantly, their bodies drawn tight like bowstrings. Sana whispered, "They have found us." He snuffed out the oil lamp and motioned for silence. In the thick darkness, there was only rain and breathing. Taya coughed again. Jonas pulled off his coat and gently laid it over the girl. In that moment, in the cold and the scent of earth, his eyes met Neola's, strong, alert. But something in them had softened, just slightly. A flash of lightning split through a crack in the wooden boards, lighting up their eyes for the briefest second. 2 worlds, 2 kinds of loneliness meeting in the heart of a storm. Jonas took a deep breath and tightened his finger on the trigger. Outside, the hoofbeats were now at the fence line. The sound of hoofbeats grew closer. The rain had eased, but the sky was still heavy, thunder rumbling in the distance like a warning. Jonas stepped out of the cellar, closed the wooden hatch, and stood on the porch, Winchester rifle in hand. 5 torches emerged through the night. Leading the riders, soaked in his buffalo hide coat, was Dutch Carver, the infamous human trafficker of southern Arizona. He was big and bloated, with a shaggy beard and beady eyes like 2 damp coals. Behind him rode 4 gunman thugs, each one feared in these parts. Carver spat into the mud and slurred, "Ward, heard you are hiding my goods. 5 giant Apache women. I have come to take back my property." Jonas stood still. Rain pattered on the brim of his hat. "There is no one here but me." Carver let out a dry laugh. "You always liked playing the hero. but around here, it is my law, not yours." He gave a signal. 2 of his men jumped off their horses and stormed into the barn and the storage shed. Doors slammed. Wood cracked. Down in the cellar, Naola heard everything, each boot step, every insult. She tightened her grip on the small knife hidden in her boot. Carver stepped forward, gun in hand, eyes scanning. "If you will not talk, I will burn this whole place down." "Fire gets mouths open quicker than guns, Ward." Jonas lowered the Winchester slightly, his voice low and cold as steel. "You burn, I shoot. Try me." The wind rose, fanning the torches until their flames flickered like dying souls. From the cellar below, Taya let out a faint moan, soft but enough for Carver to look up. "What was that?" he barked. Naola knew this was the moment. Hiding was no longer an option. She opened the hatch and stepped into the torchlight. Her massive form rose from the damp smoke nearly 7 feet tall, skin bronzed like forged copper, arms rippling with sinew, eyes black and bottomless as a storm pit. The men instinctively stepped back. Carver screamed, "God Almighty, look at this freak." Naola stepped forward, her voice calm. "I know of a ranch. 30 women are being held there. I will take you, if you let the man go." Jonas turned to her, his eyes full of anger, but Naola just shook her head slightly, her gaze firm. Carver grinned the grin of a man who thought he had already won. "Good. Deal. You come with me. And him, I take him too, just in case." He signaled for Jonas to be tied up. Below, Sana, Kira, and Luma gripped their knives, but Naola motioned for them to stay quiet. In the dark of night, they were dragged away beneath torchlight, and the real storm was only just beginning. Morning broke as Dutch Carver's riders crossed the fog-choked valley. Jonas walked in the middle of the guards, his hands tied, his back caked with mud. Beside him, Naola rode with her hands bound, her head held high. Even in chains, she carried herself like a warrior, strong, cold, and unyielding. Carver glanced over at her and sneered, "I have seen many Apache, but none like you. Do what you are told, and you might live." Naola said nothing. Her eyes stayed on the horizon, where streaks of crimson stretched across the morning sky. In that light, she thought of Taya, her youngest sister, still burning with fever, still hidden in the cellar with the others. If her plan failed, they would all die. Jonas whispered, his voice rough from the cold, "What are you planning? Are you really going to lead them there?" Naola turned, her gaze firm. "No. I will lead them to their own hell." Her words were dry as desert sand, but held a quiet certainty. The group arrived at a barren stretch between rock walls, where Carver had once built a holding camp for captured women. Crude tents, wooden frames, chains, stains of dried blood. The sounds of groaning echoed from the captives like spirits trapped in scorched earth. Carver dismounted and clapped his hands for his men. "Everything here is mine. When this is done, I will sell you all to the garrison. They love strange stock." Jonas was shoved to the ground. One guard laughed, pressing a pistol to his head. Carver turned to Naola. "Take me to the other 30. Now." Naola's lip curled into a faint smile, and for a moment, her black eyes gleamed the look of someone about to strike. She jerked her chin toward the tent. "They are in there." Carver motioned for 2 of his men to move. As they bent down to open the flap, the small knife hidden in Naola's hair flashed out. One strike, the blade sank deep into the first man's shoulder. Blood sprayed across the morning mist. Jonas lunged, slamming into the man with the gun, grabbing the Winchester. A gunshot cracked, echoing through the valley like thunder. Carver stumbled back, furious. Kill them all. But it was too late. From the rocks above, Sana, Kira, and Luma descended like falling thunder, 3 towering bodies crashing into the camp. The prison exploded into chaos. Flames erupted from oil barrels. Black smoke twisted through screams and gunfire. Naola stood in the center of the blaze, firelight licking her bronze skin. Her face calm like a war goddess made of stone. She turned to Jonas, voice steady and deep. "Now, it is our turn to open the doors." And behind the tents, the chained women began to rise. "Thank you so much for being here with me. If this story stirred old memories, dusty afternoons, the echo of hooves pounding in your heart, Then subscribe to my channel, so that each day we can sit together once more, and I will tell you another story from the Wild West. The red sunrise burned like an open wound. Smoke rose from Carver's camp, curling into the valley sky, the scent of blood and burning oil mixing into the thick perfume of freedom. The early wind blew through, carrying the cries of the defeated. Jonas Ward crouched low, loading his Winchester, eyes sharp as steel. Around him, the giant women charged through the flames, each one like a storm of her own. Sana grabbed a soldier by the collar, spun like a whirlwind, and snapped his arm with a sickening crack. Kira slipped behind another, using a prisoner's own chain to choke the guard into silence. Luma stormed the main tent, yanked off a soaked tarp, and hurled it onto the burning oil barrel. Fire exploded upward, lighting the entire sky. And Taya, the youngest, still feverish, saw a soldier charging at her sister. She sprang up and drove a broken knife into his chest, then collapsed, falling into Jonas's arms. "You are safe now," he whispered, holding her tight like a father soothing his child. In the middle of the chaos, Naola found Carver. He was scrambling to mount his horse, his face twisted in fear. She stepped toward him, each stride heavy as a hammer pounding in his chest. "You called us cargo." I was just trading. That is the law of this land." "No," Naola said, her voice low and final. "That is a crime." She lunged, ripped the gun from his hand, and struck his shoulder hard with the butt. Carver screamed and fell into the mud. Jonas raised his rifle, but Naola held up a hand. "Not yet," she said, then turned to Sana. "Help the living." The fire spread fast. Chains clattered as women were pulled from the tents. Faces hollow, caked with dust and blood, began to appear in the firelight, the first light they had seen in months of darkness. Carver crawled, reaching for a knife. Jonas fired. The bullet clipped his shoulder and sent him sprawling. "Enough," Naola said. "Let him live. Let him face the very law he spit on." Jonas looked at her, her bronze skin glowing with firelight, muscles trembling, eyes deep and fierce but lit with belief. In the smoke, she looked like a goddess stepped out of legend, powerful, but wise enough to stop at the edge of mercy. The morning wind rose, sweeping through the embers, carrying away the stench of death. The sun rose slowly, casting light on the last wisps of smoke curling above the ruined camp. Ash covered the ground where once stood a hub of human trafficking. Now only blackened wooden posts remained. The wind carried the bitter scent of char and the warmth of dried blood. Through the ashes, Jonas Ward walked in silence, his boots stepping on memories. Behind him, Naola and her sisters tended to the freed women. She tore her shirt into long strips of cloth, tying them carefully around an old woman's wounds. Each movement was firm, strong, yet her eyes held a quiet gentleness rarely seen on battle-scarred faces. Sana hauled water. Kira and Luma rigged up makeshift tents from scorched canvas. Little Taya leaned against a wooden crate, her face pale, but she smiled softly when she saw a woman's chains fall away. Carver was tied to a post, his shoulder bloodied, muttering, "You are no different from me." Jonas looked at him, then turned to Naola. "What do you plan to do with him?" She answered quietly, "Take him back to town, hand him to your law. We do not need to kill to prove we are free." Jonas said nothing. Out here on the frontier, people were used to settling things with blood, not justice. But hearing her words, something in him eased, like the weight of war finally lifting. Naola sat beside him, her gaze fixed on the rising sun beyond the ridgeline. "Freedom," she whispered, "is not something given. It is when you still carry compassion, even among the ashes." Jonas turned to her. The light caught her bronze skin, the swell of muscle, the long scar running across her shoulder. In all that fierce presence, he saw something no battlefield had ever taught him, the grace of someone who had been broken, but chose mercy anyway. He stood, tightened Carver's ropes, then grabbed the horse's reins. "Let's go." To the marshal's post. Before they left, Sana knelt in the ash and planted a broken knife into the ground. For those who did not live to see the morning, the group fell silent. Wind swept through, lifting the ashes in long silver ribbons. As they rode away from the camp, the morning light bathed their tall, blood-streaked bodies soaked in sweat, but eyes shining brighter than ever. They had won not just with blades, but with the mercy that still burned in their hearts. By the time they reached the western rise, the rain had stopped. Evening light spilled across the wet grass, golden and thick like honey. In the distance, the small town came into view, low wooden rooftops, kitchen smoke curling upward, a strange peace after a night of storms and blood. Jonas Ward stopped his horse by a creek, tied Dutch Carver tightly to the wagon, then turned to look at the Apache women walking behind him. 5 towering figures, each a full head taller than him, moved slowly through the misty dusk. Their sun-bronzed shoulders bare, muscles taut, black hair soaked with rain and blood. Their eyes held both wildness and depth. The town fell silent as they entered. People stepped aside along the road, every face recognizing Carver, the trafficker who had brought sorrow to so many homes. When Jonas handed him over to the marshal, the square held its breath. The marshal nodded and spoke softly. "Justice will be served." "You saved more lives than you know, Ward." Jonas simply replied, "I only did what was right." Then he turned away, as if wanting to step out of all the noise. But Naola called after him. She walked up, her wet black hair falling over sun-darkened shoulders, her deep eyes holding something strange, part gratitude, part something harder to name. "You did not save us," she said slowly, her voice low and rough. "You reminded us that we still have the right to choose." Jonas said nothing. He just looked at her, this woman nearly 7 feet tall, bronze-skinned, fierce and gentle all at once. In the hush of the town square, she placed her hand on his chest, then leaned down. The kiss was soft, but it felt like a vow. Not one of love, but of 2 souls who had once lost their faith in humanity, now realizing there was still something worth believing in. When she pulled away, the sun had already touched the horizon. The 5 women stood in the golden hour, wind lifting their hair, scattering the ashes of the past. Jonas spoke quietly, as if afraid to break the moment. Freedom came late, but it came. Naola smiled. "And this time, we are not leaving." Beneath the blood-red sky, 6 figures, 1 man and 5 giant women walked toward the old ranch, where the hearth fire still waited. Behind them, the church bell rang, closing the chapter of war. Summer passed slowly across the red earth. The wind carried the scent of dry grass and wood smoke, sweeping through the newly built fences. From the hilltop, Jonas Ward looked down at the ranch, once a lonely house, now filled with laughter, the sound of hammers, and horses whinnying every morning. The 5 Apache women had stayed. Naola, the tallest, wrapped a leather shawl over her shoulders, was driving stakes into the horse pen with bare hands. Sana and Kira carried buckets of water from the well, sunlight glinting off their bronze skin like heated copper. Luma was tending the fire, baking cornmeal flatbread. And Taya, now fully recovered, tied back her long hair and sat mending Jonas's shirt with wild flax thread. There was no longer white and Apache, only people, sharing the same land, working it together. Jonas sat on the porch, holding a cup of coffee, watching the kitchen smoke rise. He thought back to that stormy night, the knock at the door, Naola's proud eyes, and the way she had said, "Please, let us stay." Now, those words had become truth. They stayed not because they needed shelter, but because this place had become home. Evening settled. The sun drifted toward the edge of the hill, casting golden light across their skin. Naola stepped forward, a bundle of young wheat in her hands. She laid it down at the porch and smiled. "This land is breathing again, Jonas." He nodded, eyes warm and steady. "It is not the land, it is the people." In that moment, they were both quiet. A breeze caught a few strands of hair across her forehead. The kitchen smoke drifted between them like a thin veil. Jonas said nothing more. He just reached out and touched her rough, warm hand. Behind them, the 5 tall women sat around the fire. Laughter rose, mingling with the wind. They were no longer hunted, they were building something new. As the sun finally sank, it painted the ranch in honey-colored light. Jonas stood, looking skyward. A lone bird glided westward, vanishing into the red. He spoke softly, like a man who had once lost everything, and found himself again. Freedom does not come from what others give you. It comes when you choose to keep kindness alive in a world that tries to burn it away. Beside him, Naola took his hand and squeezed gently. In the burning west, 6 people stood in silence, watching the sun go down, knowing that, from now on, they had found home. In this dry and rugged land, Sometimes compassion is rarer than gold. Jonas once believed that freedom meant a gun and surviving the dust storms, but when those 5 women stayed, he understood true freedom is when people choose to stand together, not out of fear, but out of trust. Love does not save everything, but it can make even the hardest soil bloom. I am truly grateful to have shared this story with you. I wish you peace and happiness, wherever you are in the world. I love you all. To my dear audience of Wild West storytelling, tell me what you thought about this story. Leave a comment below. Type the number 8 if you enjoyed it. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more thrilling stories from the Wild West.